Several air scares reported in just 24 hours, an emergency landing, a fire on board, and new video tonight of a flight from Sweden to Miami rocked by turbulence. Passengers tossed throughout the cabin. And are we alone out there? An age-old question. The new Pentagon report that says we might not be. But we begin tonight with the intensifying scrutiny over President-elect Trump's picks to fill his cabinet. One of his most controversial nominees, former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, tapped to be Attorney General. Tonight, growing calls from senators to see a House Ethics Committee report on Gaetz, who was accused of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use. House Speaker Mike Johnson today saying the report should not be released, saying it would open a Pandora's box, and he didn't think it was relevant for the public to know. Meantime, President-elect Trump has announced that Karoline Leavitt, who served as the Trump campaign's national press secretary, will now serve as White House press secretary. Here's ABC's chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce for us tonight.
Tonight, a growing number of Republican senators demanding to see the House Ethics Committee report into President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General, former Congressman Matt Gaetz. The bipartisan committee had been investigating Gaetz for allegations of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use. Sources tell ABC News a woman testified he had sex with her when she was only 17 years old, something Gaetz has denied.
I have not had a relationship with a 17-year-old. That is totally false.
The investigation ended this week when Gaetz abruptly resigned from Congress hours after Trump tapped him to be his attorney general. At the time, House Speaker Mike Johnson was non-committal on whether the committee's report should be released.
As far as the timing of a release or report or something, I don't know. The Speaker of the House is not involved in that, can't be involved in that.
But today, after attending a gala with the president-elect at Mar-a-Lago, Johnson declaring the report should never see the light of day.
I believe it is very important to maintain the House's tradition of not issuing ethics reports on people who are no longer members of Congress. I think it would open a Pandora's box.
But over in the Senate, several Republicans who will have to vote on whether to confirm Gaetz say they want to see that report.
What we want to do is make good decisions based upon all the relevant facts and information that we can get.
Texas Senator John Cornyn even suggesting he's ready to issue a subpoena if necessary, telling reporters we need to have a complete vetting of the nominees, not only so we know the nominee is qualified, but also to protect the president. I'm sure it's not in his best interest to have any surprises in the House Ethics Committee report.
I think there should not be any limitation on the Senate Judiciary Committee's investigation, including whatever the House Ethics Committee has generated.
So you want to see it?
Absolutely.
Overnight, Gaetz also at that Mar-a-Lago gala. Trump didn't mention him in his remarks, but he did praise another one of his highly controversial cabinet picks, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., one of Trump's top campaign supporters, who he has now chosen to lead the Department of Health and Human Services.
I guess if you like health and if you like people that live a long time, it's the most important position. RFK Jr. Bobby?
Kennedy, a prominent vaccine skeptic, deeply suspicious of mainstream medicine, has vowed to reshape the health system in the U.S.
The agency, the USDA, the FDA have been captured by the industries they're supposed to regulate. And they all have an interest in subsidies and then in mass poisoning the American public.
Today, a host of public health experts denouncing his selection as dangerous. The Center for Science and the Public Interest saying Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not remotely qualified for the role and should be nowhere near the science-based agencies that safeguard our nutrition, food, safety, and health. Other groups like the American Academy of Pediatrics singling out his long campaign against vaccines, most of which have been used safely for decades, though Kennedy claims otherwise.
There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective.
Tonight, former acting CDC Director Dr. Richard Besser with the medical consensus that vaccines have saved lives.
There's nothing that I did for my patients that had more proven value for their health than making sure they were vaccinated fully and on time. And Mr. Kennedy has done more than just about anybody in shaking the confidence that parents have in the vaccines that are given to children.
And Mary joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida. Mary, the president-elect also announcing some other picks, including his Interior Secretary.
Yeah, that's right. The president-elect turning to another rival turned loyal supporter, tapping North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum to be his interior secretary. And tonight he's also filling out his communications team, turning to longtime aide Stephen Chung to be communications director, and for press secretary, campaign spokeswoman Caroline Levitt. Phil.
All right, Mary Bruce from West Palm Beach, Florida. Mary, thank you.
Thank you.
Joining us now for some perspective from the Democratic Party is former U.S. Senator Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota. Senator, it's good to see you, as always, on the show. Right off the bat, I'd just like to get your reaction to some of the picks this week from President-elect Trump. Some of the picks, for some people, are shocking.
Well, I wasn't actually all that surprised that he picked someone like Gaetz to be at DOJ. You know, he went conservative before with Barr and Sessions, and they wouldn't do what he asked them to do. And so he's looking for someone that will send the fear of God into all those people who he's threatened prosecution. And who better than this guy? The only problem is he didn't consult John Thune, who is going to have a yeoman's job getting a lot of these people over the finish line, because he's got opposition within his own caucus. And so this has jeopardized. I mean, it has set a tone for the first 100 days of the Trump administration. He says, I'm the president, basically a lame duck. I'm going to do what I want to do. I told you I was going to do this. Okay, you know, no big surprise on Kennedy, no big surprise on Tulsi Gabbard. And so I think that the real dynamic here that is so interesting is, what does the Senate Republican caucus do? And is it easier to just allow these things in recessed appointments, or do you basically go through advise and consent? And there won't be unanimity within that caucus on how this process will go forward.
So just, I mean, you don't, reading the tea leaves, you don't have a crystal ball, but how do you think this is going to play out? Because, you know, the president-elect did win something of a mandate, and he's got Congress completely, you know, under Republican control now. So do you think all of them will get through? Some of them will get through? How do you think it plays out?
Well, I don't think Gaetz will get through. I mean, I just think number one, he was so disruptive over in the House. He doesn't have a lot of friends, even in the Republican caucus, people who see that he really slowed a lot of Republican House progress when he was there. But honestly, think about this. You only have so much bandwidth. What is the media going to cover? Do you really want to go through 2 weeks of confirmation hearings for someone you know has a really big package of trouble? That's going to take attention away from maybe doing a tax package, maybe doing some additional things on the border, whatever it is that they're lining up to move forward, and really jam the Democrats to say, you got a mandate, you got to support this. Now you've got these very controversial nominees. And I think that when the hearings are held, that won't be a good look for the Republican caucus. And so you're really asking people who have been there, who may be in next cycle, to walk a plank for this president.
Just one last thing on Matt Gaetz. House Speaker Mike Johnson, who was there because Kevin McCarthy was ousted in part because of Matt Gaetz, said today that he does not think the House Ethics Committee should release its report into Congressman Matt Gaetz, who has been tapped to be, as we were talking about, the next Attorney General. Gaetz being investigated over sexual misconduct allegations and drug use. Johnson said that he doesn't think the details of that report were, quote, relevant to the public. I'm wondering if you think they're relevant to the public.
Doesn't matter what you and I and anybody else thinks, or Mike Johnson. It's a matter of, what do the Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, what do they believe is relevant? And you've got someone like Thom Tillis. You know, this stuff has a way of finding, you know, getting out anyway. And so, you know, to confirm somebody without that valuable piece of information is really risky for any sitting member, especially a member in a state like North Carolina, where you may have a little bit more of a challenge in this midterm getting reelected.
You tell it like it is. Always really appreciate talking to you, former Senator Heidi Heitkamp. Really do.